Up, everybody? Welcome to the Unfiltered Truth. I am your host, Phil Robinson. With me is my cat Spotty to my left. Phil, this is a little something that I did. A little show you what's going on behind Radio Row. Not really behind Radio Row, but on it. Anyway, this is a Greg Papa interview, and this was a really big experience for me, just going to the Super Bowl and covering Radio Row as media, just the next step in my career and evolution. But in terms of broadcasting, Greg Papa is like a hero to me. I've been a Raider fan unabashedly for 20 plus years, and touchdown Raiders was just was almost like, I mean, it is what it is. But to be able to sit down and rap with Greg Papa was one of those really cool things. And Papa's a really cool dude. Everything that anybody's ever said about him who's actually had a chance to meet the man is a cut above. So without further ado, I bring to you the interview. Hi, I'm Phil Robinson. I'm here with legendary Bay Area commentator and voice of the 49ers currently and former voice of the Raiders, Greg Papa. Greg, how are you?
What's up, Phil? How are you, brother? Good to see you, my friend.
Man, absolutely. We have so much to talk about. We have the Super Bowl. We've got NBA stuff, big action going on with Brooklyn and Phoenix. Since we're here in Phoenix, let's start with that.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant is traded to the Suns.
Well, let's start with the NBA moving the trading deadline, which was genius a few years ago. Remember when Vlade Divac in Sacramento traded DeMarcus Cousins? He did it right during the NBA All-Star game, right after the game was over. So they moved that deadline up. But I don't know if it was an intentional move, but you're right now in Super Bowl.
Right.
So here we are at the Super Bowl, and we're talking about the NBA. And a lot of these morning shows have all their sets outside, and we're here, and the NBA's taken over. I think that's another reason why the NFL should look into moving this season back 1 week. And then you would also have President's Day weekend, the Monday, be the day after the Super Bowl. And then get away from this, because a seismic shift like this, we got Kyrie Irving traded, but Kevin Durant's transaction is one of the biggest in the history of the NBA. We talked about it over the summer. I think you have to go back to when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was traded from the Milwaukee Bucks to the LA Lakers. Now, obviously, KD's older, but he's a four-time NBA scoring champion, a complete difference maker. And Phil, from a Warrior perspective, this is the worst possible destination.
What do they do? Is there a move to counter? Maybe they move Wiseman, maybe they move Moody. What can they do to fix this? They have a size problem.
They do. I think the move they needed to make was over the summer. I know they looked into it. It was a trade for Kevin Durant, when Kevin Durant demanded the trade on June the 30th. And there was some debate whether or not to do it, but they elected to re-sign Andrew Wiggins and to re-sign Jordan Poole. And the timeline just changed, and now you can't trade Andrew Wiggins. It's a 6-month deal from when he signed the contract, so they can't do that. So when you put one thing about Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry's a fantastic player, but as far as a pure player in the league, Kevin's the best I've seen since Jordan. Different than Tim Duncan, different than Kobe, but he's not a natural leader, and that's why it's hard for him to lead that young group in Oklahoma City all the way there. And then when he got to the Warriors, he had Steph Curry, obviously the perfect leader, and then you had the fiery vocal leader of Draymond Green, and he got in there. He couldn't put that group together in Brooklyn. Kyrie's an intelligent man, but he's conflicted. He's difficult to deal with. But now you go to Phoenix, and you've got one of the great leaders in the history of the league, Chris Paul, and Chris needs this other offensive weapon because he can't dominate a game the way he once could. In spots he can, but you don't want him popping hammies. And now you got Devin Booker, you got Kevin Durant, you got DeAndre Ayton, you come off the bench with Landry Shamet. They had to give up some good pieces. Bridge is a good player, obviously, and Cam is as well. But I think this is the worst possible destination for the Warriors to have to deal with them in the Western Conference. That will be feared. So what do they do today? Do they trade James Wiseman? Do they trade Moses Moody? Anunoby? OG Anunoby is available in Toronto. Could you put those two guys together? I remember Anunoby guarding Durant when when Durant was first with the Warriors, and Toronto had Kawhi Leonard at the time. Kawhi could not guard Durant. OG Anunoby tried. Yeah, I think KD still dropped 50 in the game, but Toronto won. But Anunoby's a good defender. So now that you got Durant in your conference, and in your division, you got to start thinking, how do we guard that guy?
And that's true. And so you make a point about Wiseman, and for me, I look at Wiseman and I think that he's just not being used properly. I think that if they were able to go to a 1-5 pick and roll like the way Mike Brown used him, that he would have a tremendous impact on the team. And I know how Kerr likes to do things, but to me, I've always wondered why he didn't just go with his own big lineup and put Looney and Wiseman out there, and then move Dre or fool around with Clay and Steph.
I agree with you. I don't think he's played that poorly. If you're saying they're not using him properly, to me they're not using him.
Period.
He's not. And I understand. And there's fundamental mistakes he's making that I'm seeing, and then other things that coaches see that I'm not seeing. But I think he's trying hard. He really has. He's played 60 NBA games. But the bottom line is, I mean, the Durant situation, I think you need to react, but not overreact. I don't want to say you can't win this year, now that Durant's here, but I kind of feel as though it's going to be hard. But I think now, Durant's in year one of a 4-year contract, so he's going to be around for a while. Now, he's Durant. He could ask for a trade next year, next summer, who knows? But I think you have to factor that you got to guard him. So the OG Anunoby, and I don't know if Toronto will do that or not, but now your thought process is a little bit different. How do we guard Kevin Durant on top of Devin Booker? We got Andrew Wiggins to guard Devin Booker. Phoenix is going to be a problem. And then you've obviously got Denver. Memphis is still there. I'd like to move the Lakers, man. I can't believe they got Russell Westbrook off that roster and be able to add them. I'm not a big D'Angelo Russell fan, but
I'm not either.
He's an upgrade. But anyway, I don't know what you do with Wiseman. I mean, my point all along has been, you insane to trade him, you just draft him. But there's a luxury tax component, and if they do pick up that option, now we're talking in the hundreds of millions of dollars on one player contract, which is obscene. So you kind of boxed yourself in, and now that you got somebody to guard Durant, could you pull off a trade where you gave up Wiseman and Moody? I wouldn't give up Kuminga. No, I think you need Kuminga to guard Durant a little bit and get somebody like OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I think you also need Kuminga to be a slasher. That's one thing that I've seen that they really, really need in order to put this team over the top is a slasher. Kind of Andre Iguodala type, but he's not the defender that Andre is. Obviously, he's still young in his career. But there's a lot of things that I look at this Warriors team, and I think that the opportunity for Kerr to really coach this team differently is there, and that's what he's going to need to do in order for them to be successful moving forward.
I think so. And with a guy like Kuminga, a little bit like Durant, and he's not Durant, but Steve had to adjust. When Durant first got here, he was, this ball movement and played with joy. And he was like, how do you guys do that? And he bought into it for a while. And then after a while, he's like, just do the play where you touch your head twice and you get it to be in the right mid post. And let me go. It's like Kevin Durant. Right. So, and Kuminga's not there, but Kuminga has the element of that game where he's gotten away a little bit of being a black hole. Not every time you touch it, do you need to go score. Try to create. A lot of times when they run that split action in the post, that post up is for a pass out of there. Draymond very seldom shoots out there. So suck a defender in, kick it back out, and then play, get them to rotate on defense. But I like Kuminga. He's made a lot of investments. Look at his three-point shot. That's for a guy who's so athletic. He would catch it and hold it and massage it and drop it. I'm like, shoot the ball, dude. No matter how fast you are, they're going to close on you. Now he's not quite Clay, but he's a lot better where he's just catching it in the pocket, going right up, and the shot's falling. He's making some other plays, fadeaway jump shots, and then he's a very good defender. He's a tremendous athlete. Some of the subtleties of the game, last night's game, he got a little off-kilter here and there, but I would not trade Kuminga. No. Now, to get Kevin Durant in the summer, I would have done it all. Right. So now, but that ship has sailed, and that's where I think when we look back on this, Phil, should they have seriously looked into trading? It was hard. You just won a championship. Yeah. Wiggins was so good. Jordan Poole was so good. Draymond was so good. Clay came back. Steph's the Finals MVP. How do you break it up? Right. But you had one chance at that time to get Kevin Durant, and now he's in the worst possible spot. He's in Phoenix.
Worst possible. Kyrie to Dallas. How does that help Luka?
How much does that help?
I want to see. I think the other way to look at it is how much can Luka help Kyrie? Kyrie needs to play, to me, more off the ball and not so ball dominant. He did that early in his career with Cleveland when he had LeBron.
Right.
And look, they won a championship and he was great. And then he, brief time with Tatum, obviously brief time with Durant. I don't think, the main thing I saw in Brooklyn is Steve Nash did not utilize their two skill sets to mesh, to break down defenses enough. Steph and KD were so weak. Whenever they ran a 1-3 pick and roll, so what do you do? Would you run Kyrie and KD? So they kind of took turns going one-on-one. That's just who they are. In Dallas, Luka's so ball dominant, way too much. He needs to get off the ball a little bit. So Kyrie will take some turns. How can they mesh their skills? Because you run a pick and roll with those guys or any kind of action. Luka's so big and just pick people apart over the defense. You run Kyrie off, pin downs and floppies, and get them screens, and just use their. That's Jason Kidd's job now.
Yes.
But I think they'll be good for each other, but they got to buy into it. And I think more than anything, I think Luka will be good for Kyrie, and then how can Kyrie help Luka, and how can they mesh it together? I thought they would be an interesting team now, but now that you got Kevin Durant on Phoenix, that's a whole other level.
It is
with Devin Booker. I mean, just look at the duos in the NBA. What's the best pairing? And it's not 2-on-2 or 3-on-3. You got to space the floor and play.
Right.
But I mean, where would you put Luka and Kyrie versus KD and Devin Booker?
That's a tough one, because when you bring up Phoenix, I don't think about CP3. I think, to me, with Kevin Durant and CP3, I think they're going to have some, maybe a little bit of chemistry issues. I know that they're all going to be working towards the same goal of getting over the top, and they're obviously going to have tremendous expectations now because the team is so loaded. But I know that in the past, Kevin and Chris did a lot of chirping at each other. Every time they play. I think, if I recall correctly, with OKC, there was a lot of inside elbows.
Yeah, that stuff happens. Once you become teammates, you become teammates.
Right.
I think Chris Paul's he's the closest thing to a John Stockton in the NBA today. Just a pure point guard. I think he'll do the right thing and back off. And now he's the quarterback.
Yeah, he can.
He's Jalen Hurts. He's just trying to get the ball to Devontae and run the bubble to A.J. Brown and Durant's A.J. Brown and Devin Booker's Devontae Smith. We're going to talk football at all? We are at the Super Bowl, aren't we?
We're going to come right into it, because now that we're talking about all of that, I'm looking at this. What I really think is the biggest matchup in this, that everybody's talking about Mahomes, everybody's talking about Kelsey. We want to see how this Chiefs line is going to slow down, stop, or impose their will on this Philadelphia offensive line. This Philadelphia offensive line is the best in the league, and probably one of the best. It's a damn good line, and I don't want to dare say bring up the Cowboys of the 90s, because I don't quite think they're there, but they're a damn good line.
They are. They're different the way we just played them, obviously, in the NFC Championship game, so I studied them a lot. They're not take-on guys like, our guys. Trent Williams comes off the ball and he's coming to get you, even in the outside zone. They all kind of block the way the 49ers' Daniel Brunskill blocks Aaron Donald, where he lets, like Jason Kelsey will back off a little bit, and will let you, say you're the nose tackle over Kelsey, or I'm Kelsey, wherever you're going and you want to go, Kelsey will just let you go and then just take his body and slide you where you're going, and then they gap you in behind it.
Right.
So they're positional blockers. Lane Johnson's a great player, great at right tackle. Dickerson's a great player. Mailata can be had a little bit of left tackle with speed, but I think that their offensive line is more positional. The way, and they do, it's an odd team because even at home, they run a lot of silent count. And I think it's because the quarterbacks just liked it. Jalen Hurts playing at Alabama and Oklahoma is comfortable with it. But I've seen them have issues with false starts with the silent count. So I'll be anxious to see what Spagnuolo, the KC defensive coordinator, does with his line. L'Jarius Sneed likes to blitz a lot off the slot.
Yes.
And you've got, they got some dominant guys on their D-line. Frank Clark he's a guy who can wreck a game like this. He's a splash guy. The guy you got to deal with is Chris Jones.
Yeah.
And they'll move him all over the front. So I know what you're saying about Philadelphia. but they're more positional. They're more it's with their brain, whereas they're going to beat you, especially Kelsey and Johnson, because they played so long. Can Kansas City, and specifically Chris Jones, do an Aaron Donald act on these guys like he did against Cincinnati at the end in Burrow, and just take the game over because he's so physically dominant?
Right, but the thing about Cincinnati was their line, they had injuries when they went into that game. And I thought, going back to last year, when you look at Cincinnati, and everybody expected them to fall off, but I didn't. I figured when they went and invested all that money in the offensive line, that was going to be what catapulted them on top. And unfortunately, their guys got hurt, and they were unable to complete the deal. Watching the Eagles line against the Niners front, what they were able to do with Bosa, what they were able to do with Armstead, I feel like the Eagles are the superior team. Now, the Chiefs have the two best players, but the Eagles are the superior team. And
Kelsey being the other one?
Yes, Kelsey being the other one.
Yeah.
And I don't really see, I know there's going to be some Mahomes magic. There's going to be Kelsey's going to do his thing, but I don't see everybody else being able to shut down the Eagles' offense.
Well, I think the key thing with Mahomes is he's staying in the pocket more. And I know it's an extra week, but I'm not going to anticipate him being appreciably better on the ankle. I think that thing is going to deteriorate as the game goes on. Super Bowls are long. I don't know if he's taking a painkiller before the game. Typically in a game with a long halftime, he'll have to take a second one or it'll wear off. No, he still was able to make that 3rd and 4 run over to the sideline to get him in field goal range with a personal foul. But there was a play where he rolled to his left. He has a hard time with that right ankle rolling left and turning. So Hassan Reddick is going to be on his right. So if I'm Kansas City, and back in the day, Hank Strand, Lenny Dawson, they were so innovative in everything they did offensively. They changed the league, increased that motion, but they also had the rolling pocket a lot with Dawson. So I mean, my thought would be to roll the pocket, but with his ankle injury, you're going to want to roll it to the right, not to the left. So you're going to roll it right into Hassan Reddick. So how do you block him? If there's one weak spot on Kansas City's O-line, it's Andrew Wiley on attacking. Yeah, we saw him. He played in the Super Bowl in '55 when they lost to Tampa. We saw him in that Super Bowl against the 49ers in Miami, Super Bowl '54. Fisher clearly held Bosa on the 3rd and 15, the 2-3 chip jet wasp play. So that'll be. I think that's the one matchup with the right ankle of Mahomes. Can he get out to his right against Hassan Reddick? And how do they help Andrew Wiley block left? Because you know where he's going to be. He's going to be right over, over the left end spot on the offense's right.
So I came up with how they were going to do that, how they were going to mitigate Hassan Reddick, and I did it watching how they played the Niners. The way that Hassan Reddick rushes is he is screaming off the edge, and Andy Reid has been a screen offense for as long as I can remember, and the spacing that Hassan Reddick is creating just by coming upfield as fast and as hard as he does is going to leave that open. And after you pop a couple screens on that rush is going to have to slow down because he's going to have to go back to containing. And as you said, Andrew Wiley he's a guy that you haven't seen in a while because he likes to hug everybody.
He does. He's a lover. He's a hugger. You're exactly right. And go back to what Andy Reid did against Nick Bosa. Not just the screen game tormented him, but those jet sweeps. Nicole Hardman's not going to play in this game, but those jet sweeps they didn't even block those. Influence block. They let him go, and they let him, kind of what I'm talking about what Jason Kelsey does. He lets you go where you want to go, but they didn't even block those. And by the time Nicole Hardman came underneath, or Jarek McKinnon, whoever we're running that jet sweep to, they got to the edge. Bosa's like, where did he go? So, but they'll go back and watch that with Reddick. But the screen is a critical part of this. Let him get upfield. But the problem the 49ers had, that's all we could throw was screens in that game. We had a fugitive. We had a one-armed man playing quarterback. So the screen was going to be a big part of the game, but it turned out to be, that's the only pass play we have.
That has got to be just depressing to get all that way. And Brock Purdy was playing amazing, incredible. He's a natural fit for this offense. I know we saw Joe Montana on our way over here, and Joe Montana said, bring Jimmy back. You guys got a conundrum there. You have the quarterback of the future, but he's not available. You have Trey Lance. What do you do with Trey Lance?
Well, they could develop Trey. I saw Trey yesterday here working for Sleep Number. He'll be able to get back on the field and progress in about 3 weeks' time. So I hope he goes maybe back to 3D QB in Southern California, works with Tom House and his people. Those are the guys that advance Jalen Hurts? Is he the most improved player you've seen in 1 year's time?
Man.
What if Trey makes that kind of jump in the offseason? Trey hasn't played as much football as Jalen Hurts. So Trey's going to work hard, do the thing, but now we know the timeline for Brock surgery. It'll be February 22nd. Hopefully they can brace it and not do Tommy John. We'll see about the recovery. So they think within 3 months they'll start to throw a little bit. So that's about Memorial Day. OTAs are going on. He'll be around the team. He won't be able to rip it with everybody. But hopefully the timeline is to get him in. 6 months will be late August. Maybe it's 5 months. Maybe get him in late July, and he's able to get rolling when training camp goes around. But despite what Joe says, and Joe knows a thing or two about quarterbacking, Brock Purdy will be the quarterback of his team. We just got to get him as healthy, get ASAP as healthy as he can.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears and let's talk about my favorite team, the Raiders.
This was all set up to get me to talk about the Raiders.
That's what I did. We got to wrap it up quick.
All right.
The Derek Carr situation. He's been in New Orleans, and I believe he's headed back now. Had a long meeting with the general manager, the coach, and some other key figures there. How does this work out? Is he going to accept this trade, or is he going to wait, get released, and then have his choice of teams to go to?
I don't think they'll trade for him. And obviously, Mickey Loomis is the GM, and Dennis Allen's the head coach. And Dennis was the head coach when Derek was a rookie. And that Seattle last preseason game when he rolled right and threw the touchdown pass on Richard Sherman, Dennis Allen made him the starter. So Dennis likes Derek. I always saw that as the match for Derek was to go with Dennis Allen. I don't think they'll trade for him. I wouldn't trade for him. Why would you? You know they're going to have to cut him.
Right.
And what kind of salary do you want to pay him? So I don't know. You want to pay him in the 30s, maybe incentivize him based on playing time. I don't know, but I think he will. I think he'll be a street free agent for a little bit of time. We'll find out a week from now, a week after 3 days after the Super Bowl, February 15th, that Wednesday, they're going to have to move on from him. So I think they will move on. I don't think New Orleans will trade for him unless somebody comes in and bluffs and says we're going to trade. And that's what the Raiders are trying to do is drum up the market. But I think he will hit the street and be able to make a decision. The thing that'll help him is he gets a month jump on the rest of the league. The new league year does not start. The legal tampering's March 13th. The new league year starts March 15th. Derek could be a free agent in February, 15th. So we'll have a month to kind of look it over. Will anybody jump in, or will you wait for something else? Because there's going to be a lot of quarterback movement in the offseason. What happens with Aaron Rodgers this offseason?
Well, after we find out what's going on after the retreat. But my producer's saying it is time for us to wrap up.
We should go do one of those. Want to do a 4-day retreat with me?
Let's do it.
You're locked in a room?
Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Popovich. I'm Phil Robinson. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Phil.
What a Larry. There you have it. The Greg Papa interview. Like I said, Greg was a great guy. Amazing interview. There was so many interesting things that happened, and I'm just gonna let you get them all one by one. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.